This happened when I was about 12 years old in Kansas. I was sitting in my bedroom playing Halo. My parents were both out running errands and my sister was at work, so I was home alone with my two dogs, a little terrier and a Bichon Frise. Not exactly the attack dog breeds, more likely early warning system at best. I had been home alone before, it really was not a big deal. We lived in a pretty safe part of town that had never had any problems, other than one time where some people sprayed KKK graffiti on some public park equipment. Anyway, I was kicking back in my chair, Doritos in one hand, controller in the other, full gamer mode, when I heard the very distinct sound of my door open and close like someone had just come in. The room I was in faced in such a way where I could not see the front door. My dogs got up and ran into the living room, and so I just assumed my parents were home. I shouted for my mum to confirm this, and I heard no response. My dogs also were not barking like they normally do when someone gets home. I thought that was kind of weird, so I paused my game and walked out into the living room. Nothing. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I had heard someone come in clear as day. I was not wearing headphones, I had the TV turned down and wasn't listening to music, so I knew it couldn't have been the game. I immediately went to my parents' closet and grabbed a shotgun, like a good Midwest boy tends to do. The only problem with that was that I didn't know where my dad kept the shells, so my plan was to fake it and hope they didn't have a gun of their own. Stupid plan, I wasn't the brightest of kids. At this point, doubt started to kick in. Had I actually heard the door? Was it the game? But then I thought, why would the dogs jump up like that if it was? I walked back into the living room, unloaded shotgun pointing in front of me. I tried to call my dad, he didn't pick up. I tried to call my mum, she didn't pick up. I tried to call two of my best friends, they didn't pick up. My 12-year-old mind immediately jumped to, holy fuck, they're all dead. And so for the first time in my life, I had to call 911. The operator picked up, I explained the situation with tears in my eyes from fear. She told me to stay calm and that the police were on their way. The difficult part about staying calm was that there was a hallway by my front door. I knew in my heart of hearts that there was someone in that hallway about to jump out and really fuck my day up. My two dogs were right by me, also staring towards the hallway. This did not help the fear. I stood there rooted to the spot for what felt like an hour, but was actually only a few minutes. The operator's voice in my ear telling me to stay calm. Thankfully my parents opened the door. "What the fuck are you doing?" I explained to my father the situation we're currently in. He grabs his pistol from the front room, didn't know that was there, thanks dad, and we go hunting. I always thought it would be cool to go around clearing rooms and shit like a SWAT team, but fuck if I wasn't about to shit myself every time we opened a bedroom door. We didn't find anything. The police arrived shortly after and told us that this had been happening over the past few weeks. People wait until homeowners leave, check the door, and if it's unlocked they go in and take valuables. They said whoever it was probably left when they heard that someone was home, which never quite sat right with me because I only had the door open and close once. Ever since this happened, I've triple checked every door and window lock whenever I'm home alone. To whoever walked in my house that day, I never saw you, and I really hope I never do. As a fun little postscript to this story, I told it to one of my friends and he goes, "You only heard the door once. You probably heard them leaving, not entering then. They were already in that house." That was not comforting. So this happened a year ago, and I'm still pretty shaken by this whole event, so I thought I'd tell my story. I live in the UK, and in autumn it gets dark at around 4 PM. There was a school autumn break that week, so all the kids were at home, so that means my girlfriend's brother was home too. I'd been with her for a year at that point, so her family knew me pretty well, and her brother enjoyed my company. She'd recently been pretty stressed out. Her parents were going out across the country for the day, so she had to look after her brother. But I thought I'd give her a day to herself so she can just cool off. I asked her parents if I could look after their son for the day instead, and they agreed. So I came around at 8 AM, and they let me in before they set off. My girlfriend's brother woke up about an hour later, and she followed shortly afterwards. We went out for breakfast at a local cafe together, and went back to her house when we were done. And once I dropped her off, I took the brother to the park. We got there at about 2 PM, and the place was pretty packed. Eventually the sun started to go down and the place was completely empty by 4 PM. I texted my girlfriend and told her we'd be home in a wee bit, and she said okay. I'm going to be honest, I completely lost track of time. Me and her brother were having fun being the only two in the park. Me and her brother were stood on top of this really tall climbing frame with a slide on it. It was almost pitch black at this point, so I was using my phone as a flashlight. A notification popped up on my screen and it was my girlfriend asking where we were. I responded, "Oops, coming home now," and told her brother we had to go. He sighed and asked if we could go down the slide and I said yes. Before I went down, I knew what the park looked like. There were streetlights all around it, benches everywhere, some trees, and places for the kids to play. When I came out of the slide, there was something weird. A man had appeared out of nowhere and was stood beneath one of the streetlights. He had a trench coat on and a beanie hat. I immediately got my girlfriend's brother behind me and called out to the man with a friendly, "Hi there!" I got a response. He started groaning. I noticed he was swaying back and forth in the light, and he had his mouth open, drooling with a blank look in his eyes. The man made me feel really fucking uneasy. I picked the little bro up and kept checking on this guy the entire time. There was an exit to my left that led to the path back home, so I left out that way and kept checking behind me every few seconds. The guy was still stood there. The path where the guy was stood merges with a big main path if you walk out through some bushes, and so does the one I walked through. I was walking down the path for about 2 minutes, periodically checking behind me, and I thought I was in the clear. I wasn't. I was on a straight stretch of path with lots of streetlights when I saw him again. He was stood beneath one looking up at it, and he was playing with something in his hands. I looked closer and realised it was a fucking knife. I kept walking and walking, checking behind me constantly. Girlfriend's little brother was so scared he had his head tucked into my chest. I noticed that the guy seemed to be moving to new streetlights whenever I turned around. Initially I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but I started counting them and realised 2 streetlights behind him had definitely turned into 5. I could faintly hear the groaning noise, and he was occasionally moaning as well. I picked up the pace a bit and turned a corner, getting into the last stretch of the street before I got to my girlfriend's house. That was when I heard him behind the row of bushes. That moaning noise sounded angry, and I heard his heavy footstep bounding down the path. The man was fucking running. I immediately broke into a sprint and didn't stop until I turned down an alleyway at the front of the street and got behind my girlfriend's house. There's a big bush, so I crouched down behind that and spammed her phone with messages to open the back gate. I hugged her brother close until she opened it for us and got us in quickly. It felt like years. I went to the front of the house and had it confirmed that I'd managed to shake him. He was now in the street, circling where I'd been, outside of the alleyway just moments ago. He was still moaning. He had that knife in his hand still. He started kicking people's bins over. I called the police immediately, but he was gone by the time they arrived, and as far as I know, they never found him. There was a similar incident near this area a few months ago. I saw it in the local Facebook group, but I don't think anything came of that era. Her parents thanked me for keeping their son safe and didn't hold any ill will against me for the situation. He went back to normal pretty much the day afterwards, but he still has nightmares about the event. When my country isn't in lockdown, I'm still allowed to look after him with my girlfriend, funnily enough, but we haven't been to the park ever since, and I still check over my shoulder and break into a cold sweat every time I'm alone in the street.